Here's everything that happened while we were on the clock. Ontario Premier warns of potential power cut to U.S. over new tariffs on Canada. U.S. judge blocks Trump from ousting government workplace board chair. NASA astronaut stuck in space for months, expected to return to Earth soon. Woman stung by scorpion while picking up luggage at airport. Target warns of price hikes due to tariffs to start as early as next week. Trump threatens new tariffs on Canada after Trudeau's retaliation. GOP lawmakers urged to hold virtual town halls amid protests from constituents. WWE co-founder confirmed to Secretary of Education. Supreme Court case highlights flow of traffic guns from the U.S. to Mexico, and justices consider immunity for gun makers as Mexico seeks damages. Suspected arsonist sets fire to Tesla charging stations, police say. BlackRock acquires 2 Panama Canal port facilities. CDC monitoring mysterious disease in the Democratic Republic of Congo that has killed dozens. Federal inmate John Fitzgerald Hansen returned to Oklahoma for likely execution after Trump reinstates federal death penalty. Trump threatens arrests of student protesters and funding cuts for universities ahead of Ohio State demonstration. And that's everything that happened while we were on the clock. 30 officers are being accused of running gladiator fights at a LA juvenile hall. For months, kids locked up at a juvenile hall in Downey, California were forced into brutal gladiator-style fights while officers just stood by and watched. Some officers even encouraged the fights, treating them as their own form of personal entertainment. Now, 30 of those officers are facing felony child abuse charges. According to California Attorney General Rob Bonta, at least 69 fights broke out in the second half of 2023 involving 143 minors between the ages of 12 and 18. Some of those fights left children injured, yet instead of stopping them, officers allegedly let them continue and sometimes even planned them. The officers behaved like referees and audience members at a prize fight. The officers got caught after one of the fights leaked early last year on social media, where it showed a teenager being attacked by multiple people while staff just stood by and watched. So the grand jury indictment outlines a pattern of abuse where certain officers encouraged fights, ignored violence, and even told new staff members not to report the beatings. The charges include 30 officers charged with felony child abuse. This carries a penalty of 2 to 6 years in prison. One officer is facing an additional misdemeanor battery charge for physically assaulting a youth. 3 officers have been charged with conspiracy, accused of knowing about the fights ahead of time and allowing them to happen. According to prosecutors, one officer is accused of bragging to new hires that they use the fights to keep control over the children. So far, 22 officers have been arraigned, with the remaining 8 scheduled for April 18th. All have been placed on unpaid leave. Casey Anthony, one of the most hated women in America, has resurfaced on TikTok, and the reaction was instant outrage, disgust, and a collective hell no. But here's the thing, there's an entire generation that doesn't even get why we hate her so much. So let me break it down for you from the perspective of a Floridian who watched this case happen in real time. So in 2008, 2-year-old Kaylee Anthony was reported missing 31 days after she initially disappeared. For months, Casey Anthony lied to police and her family about Kaylee's whereabouts, claiming Zanny the nanny had kidnapped her. Meanwhile, Casey Anthony was seen partying, entering a hot body contest, and showing no signs of worry that her 2-year-old was missing. Eventually, Casey Anthony was charged with the murder of her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee Anthony. About 6 months after Kaylee's disappearance, the child's remains were found in a wooded area near Casey's home, wrapped in a blanket with duct tape on the skull. Despite overwhelming evidence, including forensic experts testifying that Casey's trunk smelled like human decomposition, Casey's Google searches for chloroform, and Casey's strange behavior, a jury found her not guilty of murder. So the acquittal left everybody outraged because it seemed like she got away with killing her 2-year-old daughter and then going to party and have fun. During the trial, the defense argued that Kaylee accidentally drowned in the family pool and that Casey's father, George Anthony, helped cover all of it up. In the end, Casey was only convicted of lying to police. She walked free after serving time for that charge. Since then, she's tried to rebrand herself multiple times. She appears in interviews to shift blame onto her father and insists that she was wrongfully accused. And now she's popping up on TikTok talking about being a legal advocate and a voice for her daughter, and people just aren't having it. No amount of rehabilitation will change the disgust that people feel when they hear her name. The world has not forgotten about Kaylee Anthony, and I don't think we ever will. Canada is not playing around, and they are threatening to cut off the lights. In retaliation to Trump's trade war, Ontario's premier is threatening to turn off the lights for millions of Americans. For now, they will impose a 25% export tax on electricity sent to millions of homes in Minnesota, Michigan, and New York, with the possibility of cutting off the supply entirely if these tariffs continue. The premier announced the move Tuesday after President Donald Trump imposed steep tariffs on Canadian goods. Beyond electricity, Ontario is hitting back by taking a look at how it does business with the United States. The province is canceling a $100 million contract with Elon's Starlink internet service and banning American companies from securing government procurement deals. It is also considering surcharges or restrictions on critical minerals like nickel, which is an important resource for U.S. manufacturers and the Department of Defense. Ontario's liquor regulator is joining the fight, halting all purchases of U.S. alcohol. The decision cuts off billions in annual sales, affecting thousands of American products stocked in grocery stores, restaurants, and bars across the province. The United States tariffs, which took effect just after midnight, include a 25% tariff on most Canadian goods and a 10% tax on all Canadian energy exports. These measures could deal a major blow to Ontario's economy, particularly its auto and steel industries, where manufacturers warn production could stall within the next few days. In response, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has launched retaliatory tariffs targeting billions of U.S. goods. While $30 billion in tariffs will take effect immediately, the remainder will roll out over 21 days to give Canadian businesses time to adjust. This trade war is escalating between these two countries, and this will cause supply chain disruptions, higher prices, and economic instability. Today, Trump also announced that the U.S. will increase the tariffs in response to any retaliatory tariffs. The worst is yet to come. I don't garden or drink, but I know a lot of y'all do, and no judgment. Here's how Trump's new tariffs will affect the gardening and liquor industry. Everything from vapes to Don Julio could be going up. Let's start with how these tariffs affect the gardening industry. Vape products will be impacted. Most vape cartridges and devices come from China. With higher import costs, dispensaries will have to raise prices. Many gardening brands get their packaging, like Mylar bags and glass jars, from China. The tariffs could mean higher costs for businesses, which may be passed on to the consumers. Gardening growing supplies will also be impacted. This is for your flower. The people that grow your greens use a lot of important materials like LED lights, fertilizers, and nutrients. Some fertilizers, like potassium-based fertilizers, are expected to be hit the hardest by tariffs. Alcohol will also be hit. The alcohol industry is bracing for higher prices, especially for products made in Mexico and Canada. Some major brands affected include, don't jump me, Jose Cuervo, Don Julio, and Casamigos, okay, as well as Código 1530 and more. Okay, for beer, Corona Modelo, which is owned by Constellation Brands, which gets almost all of its beer from Mexico. Molson Canadian, which is also owned by Molson Coors. For whiskey and spirits, Crown Royal and Canadian Club, Absolute Vodka, Jameson, Irish Whiskey, Jack Daniel's. So if you love vapes, tequila, whiskey, or imported beer, get ready for possible price hikes. Legal gardening and alcohol brands are scrambling to adjust, and consumers may see higher prices. It's looking like it's going to be a real sober summer.